But Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda has now come out ridiculously and said, shut up, we did 9/11, be quiet. With more on Al-Qaeda chastising the government of Iran for pointing out the obvious, the controlled demolition of Tower 1, 2, and 7, Webster Tarpley, doctor of course, history, and he's also an economist, joins us to break this down, and then the situation in Wall Street with the occupation there, the world financial crisis deepening, the latest in Libya, and, of course, new saber-rattling with Iran. Dr. Tarpley, great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Well, let's get into what I was just covering. Ahmadinejad comes out and says, well, you know what he said. He said, I'm an engineer, and it looks like those are controlled demolition. And then Al-Qaeda comes out and says, no, we did it, with no proof of who even puts out this Aspire magazine.
I guess politics makes strange bedfellows. The speech by Ahmadinejad last week at the United Nations, I think, was probably the best of the entire session, because he went through a whole part on the immiseration of the world, the poverty levels, the tremendous wealth disparities, wealth inequalities, how this is actually getting worse and not better. He talked about the dysfunctionality of the international institutions, how the United Nations doesn't work. It's dominated by a clique of rich imperialist countries at the cost of everybody else. And then also in the speech at the United Nations, he said, there's basically a climate of neo-McCarthyism in the Western world, where if you bring up objections to the official story of 9/11, you're going to be threatened and intimidated. And he said the Iranian government had been threatened and intimidated when a year or two ago he brought up the question of having an international commission on 9/11, which would be a great idea, and he should go ahead and do it, and don't mind the intimidation. So this is now continuation. The Al-Qaeda, I guess they're going to take the Arlen Specter Award for the most imaginative defense of the official version so far, which is to say we're Al-Qaeda and that's not how we did it. This is absolutely ridiculous. We just have to remember what we've learned in Libya is that Al-Qaeda is the CIA Arab Legion. It always has been, it always will be, and that's who's telling you these things. So that's the CIA speaking through Al-Qaeda saying, no, it was not controlled demolition, it was the official story.
Well, Webster, routinely, you'll see an AP headline as if it's fact. Al-Qaeda says you better pass carbon taxes. They actually said that last year, or we're going to attack you. So now even Al-Qaeda supports Al Gore and this new bankster tax. I mean, just cartoonish, comic book. And it just continues on from there. But then you'll read in the bottom of the AP articles, it'll say this was posted on a message board and was unconfirmed. It should say unconfirmed message board, Al-Qaeda says pay Al Gore money, or unconfirmed message board, or Inspire magazine, which I know has Western intelligence links. You've got Anwar al-Awlaki hanging out secretly at the Pentagon. You've got Adam Gadon, hooked up with the ADL, coming out with all these videos. I mean, this is ridiculous. But as you said, I was going to go to Libya last, but now let's go to it first because you raise it. Now they're confirming, ABC News is, thousands of heat-seeking shoulder-launched missiles have fallen into Al-Qaeda's hands in Libya, so U.S. forces have to go in. Of course, Gaddafi's still fighting on. We should point out recently you were actually in Libya. And I mean, this is so predictable. First, they use Al-Qaeda to start the attempted overthrow. They call them freedom fighters who are nonviolent. Then they put Al-Qaeda in command of the cities they've got. The Gaddafi forces, the anti-Al-Qaeda forces fight on. And now they're saying we've got to invade to get military force to knock out Gaddafi because Al-Qaeda might get missiles. I mean, they're just counting on the American people not having any grasp of anything that's happening.
Today we had the amazing spectacle of an Al-Qaeda spokesman from the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. This is the infamous Belhaj, alias Hassadi, alias Hasidi, and a butcher who has left a trail of blood and corpses across the world, from Southeast Asia to the Indian subcontinent to the Middle East and many other places. So now this Belhaj, an Al-Qaeda butcher and killer who's got the blood of American troops on his hands, not only did he kill them himself, but he sent fighters into Afghanistan and Iraq to kill the GIs and also other NATO forces.
And he brags about it. This is undisputed.
Not only does he brag, but he wants to be a victim. See, in the modern politically correct world, you've got to be a victim. So he's also a victim because he was tortured by the CIA after they caught him. His right-hand man is Gumu. That's bin Laden's chauffeur, who spent 6 years in Guantanamo Bay concentration camp. So this is a guy who is now interviewed as a responsible spokesman for the Libyan revolution in the pages of the London Guardian. So,
and by the way, you were the first person I heard like 8 years ago when they first opened up Guantanamo saying that it was really a sheep dipping operation where people supposedly disappeared into it to give them street cred with, you know, Muslim fighters or whatever, jihadis, but really they had already been sent off to other areas to be trained. Now that's admitted. That really, it's just a cutout, that the real black sites and ghost sites are in other parts of the world with the real tortures going on. I mean, how transparent does this get? And now we've got to, A, give up our rights because the thousands of missiles are in the jihadis' hands, and B, they're saying drones are being deployed to Libya to fight Al-Qaeda all over Africa. African now comes in, exactly what you said, word for word. In the Obama deception, now almost 3 years ago, we even show graphics as you speak of U.S. troops in NATO invading Libya.
Well, Gaddafi is in the field and fighting. He's full of defiance. He makes statements through Syria. There's a television station in Syria that broadcasts these statements. Musa Ibrahim, the information minister, is in the field and fighting. Saeed al-Islam is in the field and fighting. And the other son, Kamis, is there. Daughter Aisha is making statements from, I guess, from Algeria, where she has taken refuge. So the Gaddafi command structure is pretty much intact. The rebels are militarily impotent. You can see that these people, they're good at butchering women and children, but they're no good at going up against Gaddafi's veterans.
Now, wait a minute. They're not, listen, they are good at butchering blacks. You were also one of the first to say, because you traveled over there, that they were 6 months ago exterminating blacks in the East when they took control. But isn't that a politically correct sacrament that they're exterminating blacks on sight?
Well, they are, but right now they're trying to take the city of Sirte. They've failed. This has been going on now for about a month. Remember, the big NATO attack on Tripoli was the 22nd of August, and now it's almost October. They can't take Sirte. They can't take Bani Walid. They can't take Saba down in the desert. And then there's this whole area of Fezzan and the south and related parts of Libya where the rebels basically have no political control whatsoever. So this is shaping up as a civil war. The bottom line lesson, though, is, strangely enough, if you're from Al-Qaeda and you're in Pakistan, then the U.S. wants to kill you. They want to blow up your wedding party with a Predator drone. But if you're Al-Qaeda in Libya, then you're going to get billions of dollars from the State Department, all the seized assets, the most modern weapons. Hillary Clinton is going to come and coquette with you, and God knows what else.
And it comes out that Tony Blair is in 6 secret meetings in the last few years with Gaddafi doing business deals. Obviously, this is also about stealing the billions of Libyan money that he invested trying to come in out of the cold. But we've got to move on to other issues here, Webster. And you really are a resident expert on Libya because you were there during the bombardment. But let's move on to the end game, because I said this at the time. I said, okay, if I'm thinking like a globalist, like one of these Anglo-American New World Order guys, you use Al-Qaeda, just disdaining the Western public. You use Al-Qaeda to overthrow, to get in control. There's still rebel forces now, that will fight back against that takeover by the West with their jihadi frontmen out of Saudi Arabia and other areas. Then you start exporting terror out of Libya to Europe and the United States, using that to take liberties and freedoms, and just use the media to ignore the fact that you put them in power. But I expected that it would take a year or two, that they would at least think that people would have a memory, so they would wait some. They're not even waiting. They're already saying, give your rights up, checkpoints everywhere. Al-Qaeda took Libya. And then that's an excuse to bring troops and NATO into Libya to fight the people they, quote, put in, but they don't actually even fight them. It's just like this mock fake chess piece they put on the board and say, we can invade anywhere we say. I mean, I know I'm ranting. It's just so absurd.
The Anglo-Americans, though, I think are in trouble on a number of fronts. If the question of the Palestinian state comes before the United Nations Security Council, and if Obama vetoes it, that will basically put an end to this entire idiotic wave of color revolutions and CIA people power coups. The so-called Arab Spring will turn into the Arab Winter in that moment. And it's very likely that as a result of that, Saudi Arabia will finally come to the parting of the ways with the United States, which is what Prince Turkey threatened in a very important op-ed in the Washington Post at the beginning of the summer.
Speaking of Turkey, not just Saudi Arabia, but not just Prince Turkey, Turkey, as you know, is moving away. And it was,
Israel,
again,
yes.
you 2 years ago, or 3, said that Saudi Arabia was quietly trying to work with Russia and Pakistan. Now that's been confirmed. So those rifts are there.
So the Saudis are, I think, coming to the parting of the ways with the U.S. The color revolution, the destabilization of Syria using death squads and commandos from the Muslim Brotherhood, I think that's failing. I think the Syrian army has basically quelled them. And then you look at Pakistan. Notice the big date is the 6th of September. Don't forget that date. The 6th of September is when General Petraeus moved from the Pentagon to the CIA. And what happened then? Within 2 or 3 days, we had that alert. On the 9/11 weekend, there was credible evidence of terrorism. Oh, my God. And then Petraeus is the guy who delivered the threat to Pakistan. It was Petraeus who met with the head of the ISI last week and said, we're blaming you for the Haqqani network. We're blaming you for the attacks on the U.S. Embassy and various assassinations in Kabul, Afghanistan. I think you're getting an increased push towards aggression as well as towards totalitarianism on the home front, and it's got General Petraeus's name on it. And let me just take this a little further. You look at the question of the Republican primaries. The constant drumbeat from the media is that no Republican candidate can win the election.
That's right. We need a savior. There's got to be somebody.
Savior.
Where is the man on the white horse? Please, Governor Christie, Jabba, save us.
We had Bachmann. So Bachmann has a boom and then a bust. Perry has a boom and then a bust. If it's Christie, he'll have a boom and a bust. What's the choreography behind all that? I think it plays into the hands of Petraeus.
I agree, and I've had insiders trying to influence me to support Petraeus. We quietly, a few months ago, talked on air about this, and so definitely the system is finagling to test the waters for fainting Petraeus.
And this, yes, exactly. Like Julius Caesar, he seems to have the falling sickness, right? If you look in Shakespeare. But with Petraeus, it's that somehow he's lurking in the background. He's not going to go and slog through the snows of New Hampshire. He's not going to go glad-handing people at Rotary meetings in Iowa. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to come in as the man on horseback, uniting the Pentagon and the CIA, using the Republican Party, but really floating above it, because...
And we notice the social engineers always repeat the same plays. This is just like the Bushes and Brown Brother Harriman and others coming to Smedley Butler, the 2-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, the guy that's set to be the Marine Corps Commandant, and saying, we want to make you dictator. We'll run you in a sham election. We want you to lead 500,000 men. And he wasn't a fascist, but he played along with it long enough to expose them. And that's all part of history. And the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, as you know, brought all that out, Dr. Tarpley. And I do see a replay of this. And then all this fake right-wing talk on Fox and stuff about, ooh, there might be a military coup. I'm seeing that floated. They'll fix this, Obama. So very, very dangerous situation we see. And folks, don't think this won't happen. When countries and the world especially go into depressions, the move by the oligarchs, the finance oligarchs, is always to try to put strong military men in control. Webster, as a doctor of history, briefly explain why that's the case.
Well, if you look at the 1930s, we have this pattern, right? Which goes from world economic depression from 1929 to 1933. Then you get, in 1933, the Hitler regime, which is only one of a whole series of fascist governments. It started in Italy in 1922. The crisis hit them first. But as you go on later, basically most of the governments in continental Europe, especially Eastern continental Europe, become fascist in some way or other, be it Romania or Hungary or Poland or whatever it is. That's the first step, right? So depression comes first, then a dictatorship, right, as emergency rule. We have all kinds of pressure towards Bonapartism. There's some governor today says she wants to call off congressional elections for a couple of terms.
Yeah. That was the North Carolina governor, and it's been confirmed. Yeah. The audio's been released, and the newspaper's confirmed. She was serious. She said, let's suspend elections. Obama's talked about how great it would be if it could be his way. And we already have this super Congress where 12 men and women create the spending bills. That's unconstitutional. The president has this veto, a council of 13. Europe's moving towards a, quote, economic union in their crisis. The whole move is towards dictatorial, undemocratic systems.